The stage is the main event of the World Series of Poker 2010. There's a top prize of almost $9 million for the winner, but all the players in the top 9 will take home life-changing sums. Of the 7,300 players who entered, only 15 remain in competition. Among them is the young Matt Affleck, a great player with a big stack. Matt was on a great run throughout the whole tournament, and it seemed that way in this next hand. When he opened his cards, he found 2 aces, the best possible hand before the flop.
Is this real that I'm getting so many big hands at the kind of biggest stage in my life right now?
He couldn't believe how they kept dealing him monsters one after another, but a few minutes later, he would have wished, never getting involved in this one.
The river card. Oh, it's an 8! A crushing blow to Matt Affleck!
Matt Affleck grew up as a typical kid in the United States. When he was in high school, he got a job at a grocery store to earn extra money. But then he discovered poker and started playing low-limit sit-and-go tournaments. Until one day, luck smiled on him when he won a party poker tournament with a $20 entry, taking home a prize of $10,000. This would be the first step on his career. The following year, he enrolled at the University of Washington, where he continued playing in his free time, although school would remain his priority. But everything was about to change for him after experiencing one of the most curious stories ever heard from online poker. While he was at university, Matt kept playing on PokerStars and won a satellite for a $3,000 tournament in the Scoop series. That amount was a lot of money for him at the time, so he tried to sell part of his stake in the tournament, but he would find no buyers, which forced him to take on all the risk. Fortunately, it turned out to be a great decision, as he played very well and variance was on his side, which led him to the final table of the 2009 Scoop. Affleck was in a dream position, fighting for a large amount of money. But then things got complicated, something that would become a constant for Matt every time he ran deep in a poker tournament. The dorm where he was staying had an unstable internet connection, and just as the final table started, the internet went down. Affleck panicked, fearing he would lose all his chips before the internet came back, so he ran frantically to the library, got into a private booth, and stayed there for 5 hours until finishing the tournament. In the end, he managed to make a deal among the last 3 players, taking home $470,000. This crucial victory is one of those that would propel him to the legendary moment that was going to make him famous. Despite having won a lot of money, Affleck did not abandon his university studies and made sure to graduate with a degree in finance. However, after finishing school, the United States was in the worst recession in recent times, and at least 1,000 people were competing for the same position in the corporate world. This situation led him to make an important decision about his future. My original plan was to start my own business, or perhaps enter the corporate world. But when I graduated, I knew I wanted to try playing poker professionally. In 2009, Matt Affleck had a small preview of what it meant to run deep in the WSOP Main Event, as at the start of day 5 he found himself chip leader. But due to his inexperience, he ended up busting after losing a couple of big pots and finished the tournament in 80th place, taking home $68,000. However, this was not enough for him, and he would return determined to win it all back the following year. In his own words, he wanted to win this tournament more than anyone in the room. The 2010 main event was perhaps the most exciting in history, with some of the most memorable characters and very skilled players, and among them was this quiet but determined kid from Maryland, accumulating pot after pot with solid play and showing incredible growth from the previous year. Matt once again reached the final stages, and when day 7 of the tournament arrived, he started gaining notoriety, especially from commentator Norman Chad, who was rooting for him to be the next champion.
The kid had the chip lead last year and then took the express out the door. Did he whine? No. Did he moan? No. Did he come back the very next year and take the chip lead again? Yes. You go, Matt.
This was due to his friendly attitude, his posture at the table, and the rhythm with which he made each move. At the end of the day, Matt did an interview and forgot his glasses on the desk where it was done, so he was not going to have his lenses on the most important day of his career, day 8 of the main event. When this new day began, only 27 players remained, and Matt was in a great position to reach the final table of the most prestigious tournament in the world. Later, as day 8 was approaching its end, Matt found himself second in chips at his table with around 20 million and had the chip leader to his right, the Canadian Jonathan Duhamel. Although Matt was in the best position to dictate the action at the table, he had no plans to get involved in a big pot with the only player who had more chips than him. But when the cards fall in the right order, there is no other way to proceed. You have to play them. The way this hand unfolded is one of the most dramatic and heartbreaking in the history of the game. At that moment, 15 players remained from the more than 7,000, and each of the competitors had already secured a prize of $500,000. However, all attention was on the top 3 spots, where the winner would take home close to $9 million. The blinds were at 120,000, 240,000. The chip leader, Jonathan Duhamel, checks his cards, sees a pair of jacks, and raises to 575,000. The next act is Matt Affleck, who looks at his cards and sees a pair of aces.
Is this real that I'm getting so many big hands at the kind of biggest stage in my life right now?
Naturally, Matt 3-bets to 1.5 million, hoping someone would make a big mistake against him. The decision goes back to Duhamel, who 4-bets to 3.9 million. The tension began to stir as the 2 players with the most chips at the table started to clash in a huge pot. Matt Affleck had a crucial decision to make at this moment. He would make another raise or shove, or simply call Duhamel's bet. Either of these 2 decisions could have changed the course of this story. However, Matt decided to simply call for these 2 reasons.
There's a couple of reasons why I choose to just call. There's a very large percentage chance that he's going to bet another 4 million on the flop, no matter what the board comes. The second is the fact that I have aces. There's almost no hand that he could have that I'm scared about him out flopping me. That's the best hand to slow play here.
On the flop came a 10, 9, 7. At this point, Matt was not really worried that Duhamel had something that beat him. Jonathan acts first, and surprisingly decides to just check. There were more than 8 million in the pot, and Matt wanted to win the maximum number of chips. So he decides to bet 5 million with the plan to call if his opponent went all in. But once again, Duhamel surprises him by just calling the bet. The turn brings a dangerous card, the Queen of Diamonds. The pot had grown to 18 million, and Duhamel checks again, leaving Affleck with only one move if he wanted to give himself the best chance of winning this hand.
Duhamel checks again.
Affleck in his familiar pose.
Mullen.
He says all in for 11.6 million.
Now the decision was in the Canadians' hands. On the television broadcast, this decision appeared much faster than it actually was. In reality, Duhamel sat for 6 minutes, contemplating whether he should call. The commentators wondered whether Jonathan Duhamel would make that massive call. With what was only a marginal hand at best, nobody knew what was going through his mind. But there was only one thing that was certain. He was willing to take risks.
A huge decision for Duhamel. He's not getting the right price to call, and he'd be left with just over 8 million chips if he loses.
Duhamel thinking very seriously about this.
Call.
And makes the call.
Everyone was in total shock. Nobody expected 2 titans of the tournament to clash so close to the final table. But that is the unexpected nature of poker. Although this was a pot of 41 million in tournament chips, the real value of this hand today is estimated at $3.3 million. As hard as it was to believe, the turn of the next card would decide who was going to become a millionaire.
Everyone on pins and needles here at the Rio, this will be the biggest river card of the tournament.
This was the moment of redemption for Matt. The year before, he had been close, but made a big mistake. And now he was here again, thinking,
Wow, I'm really going to win the tournament this time, and this is going to be life-changing if things work out my way.
His 2 aces had a great advantage, but he needed to dodge any 8 jack or king. When he saw what his opponent had, the expression on his face said it all. He was nervous and on edge. This is an indescribable feeling that all poker players face when waiting for that last card to be revealed. But the difference is that he had to face it on the biggest stage of the game, and what happened next would change his life forever.
Matt Affleck is going to have 41 million chips or no chips. He needs to dodge a king, jack, or 8.
The river card. Oh, it's an 8! A crushing blow to Matt Affleck. Duhamel hit his card and eliminates young Matt Affleck.
He's got to be heartbroken.
Upon seeing the 8 of diamonds on the river, you could see how the soul left his body for a second, and it took him a long time to come out of that state of shock. Then, unable to contain his emotions, he cried in front of the cameras, then walked out of the room and threw a bottle on the floor in desperation. $9 million had just slipped through his hands with the turn of a single card. Meanwhile, he kept asking himself,
did I blow the biggest opportunity in my life? And I'm thinking, did I misplay the hand at some point? And it's just a lot of emotion going through my head.
But after his reaction, he had one of the most respectable gestures. He went back to the table, congratulated everyone, and even shook the hand of the man who had just destroyed his dream, before leaving with a respectable prize of $500,000. It was not the $9 million he wanted, those he could have reached had he won that pot, but perhaps it was not the worst thing in the world. The winner of that tournament ended up being the winner of that hand, Jonathan Duhamel. Today, very little is known about him. He even had tax problems and suffered a major robbery following his victory. On the other hand, Matt Affleck remains very active in the game, participating in cash games and tournaments, and is even a coach at one of the largest poker schools in the United States. But everyone, even he himself, cannot help but wonder, what could have become of him if he had won this great hand?